I'm an English teacher by day, and I investigate the paranormal by night. It's my experience investigating the Indiana State Sanatorium, or the Lee Allen Bryant facility, also known as. This trip began with me. I'm a part of a group in Facebook called Abandoned and Haunted Indiana. So there were some people there talking about this place, and they had shared that they'd opened it up for investigations and they were beginning to book. And I think I booked it like March or April. I reached out to the owners via Facebook. They gave me the price. It was actually a really good deal. If you want to rent it for the whole night privately, you get the whole place to yourself. It's $600 and you get it from 5 p.m. one day to 11 a.m. the next day. They also have camping and sleeping on site. So if you want to spend the night and actually sleep there, you can. So I wanted to go because my husband and I had been investigating paranormal for a while, specifically using spirit boxes.
Thank you for being so strong.
Just listen.
I'll listen to you.
I can help you. Be ready.
Alice, tell us what we need to know.
I'm always ready.
Help us, Alice.
It goes deep.
And I knew this place was pretty big, so I invited a large group of people because it's such a huge place. So contacted Jasmine, who went with me whenever we did Whispers, and a few other people that went with us for Whispers, and then we added a few newcomers to the group and came up with a plan, and we decided to go for it just to kind of get a history on this place. We didn't really know anything about it at all. I didn't know anything about it at all, other than the fact that it was a sanatorium and it's where people with tuberculosis went to be treated and probably ultimately died. And then my mom, who is a nurse, had told me a little bit about it being a state hospital for the elderly or a nursing home. So I knew a little bit about that. I watched a couple of videos on it, but when I went into the experience, I didn't really have much of an idea. And I think it being unknown to me made me a little nervous about taking such a big group into a place that I had no knowledge of. When we did Whispers, like, I was very intimately familiar with that space. I'd been there, almost a dozen times. My uncle owns that house. So I wasn't nervous at all, but taking a bunch of people into this new space, I was afraid it would be chaotic. But we got our group together. We put together a document. We pulled some cards. We decided to do the Three Kings and the Seance again at this space. And then we tried to stay as organized as we could, and then we went. So Jasmine and I met at Applebee's. The big asylum trip coming June 1st. This is 18,000 square feet of unexplored terrain.
And apparently, I'm doing Three Kings.
Where we meet to pull some cards. And she live streamed it, so you can check that out. And we asked some questions about what can we expect here, what's going to happen here, should we do Three Kings here, should we do a seance here? And the cards were very much like, there's a lot of spirits here, a lot of chaotic forces at play. It's very unknown, it's huge, and it's going to be more challenging than we thought. But the cards were like, yes, you should do Three Kings, yes, Jasmine should do it, yes, you should have a seance. And then we sort of worked out who should do what per the cards. So we asked the cards, like, should this person do this? Should this person do that? And so it ended up being Jasmine would do Three Kings, Kat would be middleman number 1, Holly would be middleman number 2. Hale and I would co-lead the seance. And then Jordan would, of course, do the spirit box with our friend Lorena, casting protection over him as he does that. And then the other people who wanted to be part of it, asking questions. So like Nick and Matt being kind of the people that ask questions. And then my cousin Savannah did pendulum work for us during that. So we did that, and we made a document. We let everybody know. We tried to stay organized as far as like who was arriving when. We rented a car so we could all sort of ride together, or half of us could ride together. And we drove out west of where we all live to, it's Rockville, Indiana, which is the country, the sticks, kind of. And when we got there, we pulled up to an office because the place had like one modern office building. And when I say modern, it was like probably refurbished in like the 90s. It has air conditioning, kind of. And it looked like an office building they had turned into just a space for like storage, and they had some beds there, so if you want to rent a room you could. And we got there like right before 5, and we went in to check in. Well, I went in to check in. So I go in, and there's this woman in there, and she's kind of standing by herself. Well, no, she's not in there whenever I walk in. When I walk in, no one's in there, but I could hear somebody off in the distance, so I kind of called hello. And like this had been prearranged for months, so I was like, okay, they know I'm coming. The woman comes in, and it's like 4:53 when I walk in, right? She's like, oh, you're here a little bit early. I was like, yeah, I just want to get signed in and get started. She's like, okay, well, I'll get some waivers, and I'm going to clean off this table. Just give me a few minutes. I was like, all right. I go outside. I tell the rest of the group what's going on. We all come in. We're still waiting on some people to arrive. Some people arrive later. And then we go back in, and nobody's there. Nobody's there for like 45 minutes.
We're just chilling in this place.
And you probably saw me in the part 1 footage say,
Your thoughts right now. This is unprofessional bullshit. Honestly. Unprofessional.
it's just kind of odd to me that they weren't ready to go on time, but whatever. So when we realize everybody that's going to get there is there, we all sign our waivers. And the weird thing about the waiver is it says no filming X-rated content in the waiver, which was strange. That was the weirdest thing. Didn't really like that Jasmine was filming. Kind of tried to joke around, but like wasn't really joking, kind of that kind of thing.
Are you recording?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
You didn't ask my permission.
Yeah.
You can't record somebody without us previously saying, hey, I'm recording. Because what if I said something bad? Wait, did I say something bad?
No,
Did you?
You said nothing.
Okay.
She always records.
Yeah, no, you really should ask permission first. She's still recording me, and
No, you all
somebody needs to talk to this girl.
Do I have permission?
Oh my gosh.
Well, now, no.
I
No,
know, it
I'm
looks like a
comfortable.
spider.
Do you want me to stop recording?
No, you're
But anyway, he led us on this tour, and he told us the history, and I'll break it down for you in case you haven't watched it. The history of this place: it was built in like the early 1900s. It was a sanatorium for people with TB. It became a holding place for children with tuberculosis, and they eventually turned it into a place where kids who had TB could go there and they could get schooling and training and like life skills. And he says that it was one of the most accredited places to go to schools. There was a waiting list for kids who had TB to go there because it was a good institution for that. However, I mean, like any of the TB places, it had like an 80 to 90% death rate because tuberculosis was so deadly back then. So after that, in like the 60s, it stopped being a tuberculosis sanatorium because they found a cure for tuberculosis. So it closed for a little bit. And then in the 70s, they opened it back up, and they were planning to renovate it, and they were pitching it to the state as a nursing home. The state was like, yeah, we're going to shut down a nursing home, and we'll send some of our patients there. No big deal. Well, then the state decided that they weren't going to do that. So this place sat empty for a while, and they're like, okay, we need patients. So they took mental hospital patients in because one of those hospitals had closed. State didn't like that. They kind of made a fuss about it. But eventually they did close down a nursing home elsewhere in the state, and they took in some of those patients as well. The place closed in 2011 because it just wasn't being run well from what I could tell and what I'd heard, and they just abandoned the whole place. So if you go there, every single thing that you see, it's like people's clothes are still in their dresser. Photos are still on the wall. If you watch some of the footage, you'll see birthday cards. Medical records are still there, which is a big red flag for me as far as like privacy and what the state had done with those things. And also, like, you kind of go at your own risk because you go into this place and it's structurally, it's unsound. I mean, it's abandoned. It's been abandoned for, you know, 12 or 11, 12 years almost now. So, and it was run down before that. Like, they weren't taking care of some of the buildings even before that. They weren't using them all. There are so many buildings on the property. They're like homes where doctors used to live. There's like the admin building. There's like the superintendent's home. There's the nursing home ward, and then there's the mental patient ward. So, and then there's the children's ward, which is where they were kind of had our home base, our base camp, where they had modernized amenities there. So we did the tour. The tunnels were cool. We went through the tunnels. There are tunnels that connect all the buildings. There are bats in the tunnels. If you watch the videos, you'll see the bats. You know, the tunnels have like divots in the floor and things like that. And like there are along the tunnels like windows that are busted open, and like there's ivy growing through the windows, and it's really cool. It's like if you ever watch those, you're into abandoned places and like that kind of photography, it's a good opportunity for that. So we walked through all of that. We did the tour, and then we unloaded our car, set up our base camp. And then some of us went to go scope out, okay, where are we going to do the Three Kings and the Seance? Because logistically, you kind of have to keep them close together for the sake of the middleman. Never heard about this before. The Three Kings is a magical ritual where one person, in this case Jasmine, is a conduit for malefic energy. So these can be malefic spirits. These can be things that were never living people, like egregore type energy. It can be all different kinds of things, but that's what Jasmine was. She was gonna take all this energy in and hold it within her body so that we had time to communicate with the spirits 2 floors above her. And between us and her, there were 2 middlemen. So Kat was the first one, and then Holly, and then there was so Jasmine, Kat, Holly, and then the Seance. And those 2 middlemen, their job is to just observe. And if any of those malefic forces make it past Jasmine and try to make it up to the Seance, they could stop them. So that was their job. I do believe that some of it did get through in the Seance. If you watch the video, you'll hear places where it does come through. I do believe that some of them were messing with Kat and Holly. Holly had 3 bats, or she had bats flying at her the whole time she was up there. Kat also was hearing things and seeing things and kind of feeling things during her experience. And you'll hear about all that whenever they get interviewed. But I was up with a Seance. So after we got all that picked out, we went back to, and I'll talk about the Seance here in a minute, but we went back to everybody. Jasmine kind of ran through everything with the whole group, and we left it open. We're like, if you want to participate in this, come on. If you don't, you don't have to. There were a couple people in our group that that wasn't really their thing. They were there more for the historical aspect of it, so they stayed outside, which was kind of nice because we had a couple people on deck if like anything went crazy. You know, like they were waiting in their car, so like if we needed anything, they could quickly drive back or like take us somewhere if we needed them. So we took all of our stuff there. We set up. Jasmine set up in the tunnels below. Test it out. You move your arms and shit. And then we did, the 3 mirrors. So Jasmine was sitting in 3 mirrors with her feet in water. She was bound, hands and feet, couldn't move.
Where we have brought her, this witch a vessel.
And that's important that she's not able to move. And it's kind of like a medicine cabinet where she can see herself and then her periphery. And the idea is she's channeling these entities, this malefic energy, into these mirrors and into herself. And she's interacting with them and kind of keeping them entertained while we talk to the spirits of the dead who might have been attached to this place. So we set that up, and then we showed Kat and Holly their areas, and they kind of got an idea of where they would be. And then we set up the Seance area. We carried a table up there. We set up the chairs in a circle. We put out, our candles and everything that we needed, our cards, our pendulum. set up the spirit box. And then we went back down to the Three Kings and we did the invocation, which if you're on Patreon, Jasmine posted that invocation if you're interested in seeing that. And we did like a chant to protect Jasmine to start. And after we did that chant, as soon as we started doing that chant, I could feel it, like it was starting. And like right after we did that, when we were getting ready to do the chant, Jasmine's like, you need to start now.
You guys need to start now.
Yeah.
Because I think she could feel it coming on too. So we started the chant, we ended the chant, and then as soon as the chant was over, I was like, let's go. So we ran up 2 flights of stairs. We left Kat and then Holly, and then we went up to the seance and we started the seance. I feel like those spirits wanted to talk so badly, because normally when we do seances, we have to evoke a couple times. And what that means is like, you're basically like calling on the phone and they get to choose if they pick up or not. And like usually the first time or two, they don't. So like when we did this at Whispers, we had to invoke, evoke, invoke, evoke, invoke. We had to invoke 3 times to get anyone to answer. So what that means is like, you're basically calling them, you're saying, hey, come here, we want to talk to you, with the chant. And if you watch the video, you'll hear the chant. And then I ask the cards, like, are there spirits here that want to talk? And then they'll tell me yes or no. And then we also had the pendulum going to kind of back us up, which was nice. So the spirits like picked up right away. And honestly, like in the seance, we were getting some really good information. Hale is really good at sensing like what kind of information we needed to get. So they helped a lot with asking the questions and knowing what line of questioning to go in. And then I was more like doing the tarot cards and talking to my cousin who was doing the pendulum, and then Jordan was running the spirit box. And it's important to note too that like while we're doing the seance, we're asking the questions, Jordan has headphones and noise cancelers on, so he can't hear us. So much of the conversation sounds like we're having a conversation with him and he's like answering and his answers make sense, but it's important to note that he can't hear our questions. And the reason we do it that way is because we want to leave out pareidolia. What that means is like, if we ask, are you here? And Jordan knows we're asking that question, it's going to be really easy for him to hear somebody say yes, or yes, I'm here, or something like that, right? But if he doesn't know what we're saying, then if he says, I'm here, or we're here, or yes, I'm here, then that makes it a little bit more significant. A lot of paranormal groups it's called the Estes method. A lot of paranormal groups use this. The Hellier group started it. So, I mean, if you've probably seen it done before if you're into this kind of thing. So we started with the seance, and it was really interesting because during the seance, we could hear Jasmine screaming because Jasmine's in the tunnels echo, and you could hear everything. Now, the interesting thing is I didn't pick it up on my seance audio. I don't know if Matt picked it up on his, but it didn't pick up on my audio, but we could hear her screaming the whole time. And it was really hard for us sometimes to like stay focused because of that, because we were worried about her. But we also knew she was doing the good work.
I will say, Paige, that none of the seance audios picked it up at all.
That's interesting.
Hale's didn't, yours didn't, and Matt's didn't.
That's interesting.
But it's clear as day in Kat's. Like,
yeah.
100%.
Oh, we heard it. We could hear it.
Yeah.
We had a lot of technical malfunctions, so it was good that we had backup. So like, I recorded it with my phone, Matt recorded it with his phone, Hale recorded it with their phone. And between the 3 of us, we got plenty of recordings of it, but several other people tried to record, and I don't think it was working the right way. So anyway, we gleaned a lot of information from the seance about like the treatment of the people there. There were several elderly people that tried to talk to us. There was one woman who practiced tarot who wanted to talk to us. There were children that wanted to talk. And what was interesting is like one of the kids even talked about like my son and kind of tried to mention that he was like my son, or he was around the same age as my son. They tried to talk, they wanted to talk about what happened there. Sometimes some of them mentioned a gun. Some of them mentioned being abused. Like, it's very triggering kind of content. If you are sensitive to that kind of stuff, I would, use caution if you viewed any of it, because it's sad. Like, the bottom line is that place is really, really sad. And Jasmine made a good point in some of our conversations about this place that, 4,000 people they've estimated died there. Like, it's a tragic place. It's not a place of, it's not like Whispers where people like lived there too, like, I mean, they did live there, but they didn't live like super happy lives. Like in Whispers, and I compare it to that because that's the only other place we've done these things together. In Whispers, like, Dr. John lived and died in that house. He lived a long life. His children, and I assume they had good moments, right? Like they were just a regular family trying to live their life. Same thing with a lot of other people that died in Whispers. They were just regular people, like, trying to live their life. There were happy moments, there were sad moments, whatever. But in this place, this is a place where people went to die. Like, this is a place where people were forcibly put to be forgotten. Their family didn't know what else to do with them. The state didn't know what to do with them. They just threw them in there against their will. I mean, during the tour, our tour guide did tell us some heartbreaking stories about people who were so desperate to get out of there, they would run away. They would hide food outside, and they would live outside. They would rather live outside than live there. They would run out into the street and get hit by cars. They would kill themselves. Like, this is a very tragic place, and these people, I don't know if any of this kind of work had been done there before. I would assume probably not to this extent, but they wanted to talk and share their story. One thing that Hale and I did before we left is we left some candy for the kids. The kids had requested that, they wanted something different than, like, they wanted some candy. They wanted an offering. So we left like some gummy, some fruit snacks and gummies there for them. And just things like that. Like, they don't want to be forgotten. They wanted to be honored. And I felt like that really was the purpose of our seance, was giving them a voice. There were some malefic things that came through sometimes, and we had to banish those people or those entities or those spirits. One specifically who did some terrible things to the kids and was trying to taunt us and get us to leave. That's what that kind of stuff does. And that's why Three Kings is so important. If you have anytime you have a seance where there's malefic energy present, you're not going to get anywhere unless you have something for that energy to do. You're going to get stuff through the spirit box where they're like, F you, go away, stupid, and they call you names. Like, they call you worse names than that. But that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get any answers. You're not going to hear from the dead. You're not going to hear the stories of the people that died there. So that's the whole point of the Three Kings. It's a diversion for the malefic energy so that we can talk to the people that died and just hear their story. And we were all really respectful, and we were really grateful, and we had 35 good minutes of conversation with these people that lived there and died there. And I think overall, like, it was probably one of the most productive seances I've ever had because of Jasmine being able to hold all that down there and keep it away. Because if she hadn't done that, we wouldn't have gotten any answers. We would have just been told to leave. And they tried a couple of times, but then they quickly left, and we got to talk to them. So once that was done, we all regrouped. We listened to our audio. We had conversations. Some people left. Some of us went back and just kind of walked through and explored a little bit more. And then that was pretty much the end of our night because we were exhausted. It's an exhausting thing, especially in a place like that where so many people have died. There's so much energy there. It's heavy work. If you're going to go there and do any kind of magical work or any kind of necromancy, I recommend not doing it alone and making sure that you go in properly grounded and with a good plan, because if we had not done that, then I think all of us would have ended up worse for the wear. And some of us didn't end the night so peacefully. Some of us went home and cried. Some of us were emotional. I mean, it was a very emotional experience. Some of us were drained for days and days after and needed lots of sleep. Some of us were very irritable, and couldn't really put a reason on why. And
like, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I feel fine, especially after taking a cleansing bath, getting some sleep. However, physically, I feel super drained.
Because a place like that is hard to do spiritual work there. But I think, like, if I'm going to take anything away from this experience, it would be just reinforcing the importance of being respectful and preserving places like that. to memorialize those people that died, because that's 4,000 people that were just left there to rot. And I don't want to say nobody cared for them at all, but that's probably very much how a lot of them felt, because it's an institution, a state-run institution. Those don't have the greatest track record, even back then. So, I don't know if I will go back, simply because I personally don't agree what the ownership wants to do with it. They did talk about how they wanted to turn it into a camping ground, a wedding destination, a place to have concerts and things like that. And I understand the appeal of using all that land, because it's a ton of land, and all that cool historical buildings to do that in a way. But at the same time, you're doing that on a spot where many people died, and died horribly, not peacefully. So I don't think that I really want to patronize that again. If the money were going towards historical preservation, opening it for tours, restoring it, and creating a memorial space for those people, sure. But that's not the impression I got from that. That was really my only negative of the thing, is what the ultimate goals for that place were. But I am glad that I got to see it before they turned it into that. And I'm thankful that the spirits felt like they could talk to us and talk to me and open up to us about their lives, because that was, it was very impactful. And like I said, anytime you work with the dead, it's like, just treat them with respect. Doing magic on these grounds was interesting, because Jasmine talks about genus loci a lot, and that's a big part of this space. There are hundreds of acres of wooded area on this space as well. And like I said before, if you go down in the tunnels, or anywhere really, you'll see that nature has started to overgrow and like take the area back a little bit. So you're kind of dealing with, that's another thing that pops up in our seance. So you're kind of dealing with three things. You're dealing with malefic force, probably things that weren't living, or some spirits of the living, of the dead who did live but are malefic, you know, just like people can be, living people. And then you're also dealing with the spirits that died there and want to talk to you, or, you know, are residing there still. And then you're dealing with the spirits of the land. I mean, you're dealing with the spirits of the land anywhere, but I didn't feel that as much at Whispers as I did at this place. One time during the seance, we did have someone who was like kind of a land spirit or a protector of the land come through, calling himself Johnny, or themselves Johnny. And so we talked to them a little bit, and that was interesting to us, because we pulled cards. We're like, okay, are you a living spirit? Are you a malefic spirit? Are you like, what are you? And it was like, oh yeah, you're a spirit of the land. You're something that protects the space. So that was a big difference, because you had to also be respectful. I mean, you should always be respectful of the nature there, but there's very much like that element coming into play here, because it is on so much nature, and like there's so many trails and like forests and all that. So that added to, I don't want to say made it more complicated, but it definitely added to the feeling of being there and like how you work your magic there. The second thing that was different was this place had been abandoned for a long time, and like it was obvious that nobody was really caring for it. Like the people that own it have a huge job. If they're trying to clear it out, clean it, and repurpose it, they can't be everywhere all the time. They have a lot of work to do. So this is in no way throwing shade at them for this particular aspect of it. But Whispers, my uncle and the people that owned it before him, they tended to that house. You know, they furnished it, they fixed it up. If something broke, they made it better. My uncle spent so much money building a brand new deck for it. They put fresh coats of paint down. They try to make it nice. And I think that makes a difference to the spirits there, because they're like, oh, you're trying to keep our house nice. Like, we live here. We appreciate that. Or at the very least, they can feel that love going into this place that they also call home, right? However, this place is not like that. They've got things like bicycles from the 1940s sitting out, just out, like on piles of gravel, you know, teddy bears, like rotting in the middle of the floor. things just forgotten. And like I said, these people, there are only a few people that do that. So I don't expect them to be able to clean it all up at once. But at the same time, like, that's a very different feeling. And so the spirits feel very forgotten about. They feel very, the sense that I get is very much like, leave us alone. You don't care. Like, you don't care about us. When we walked in from, like the admin building, you cross a threshold into like the nursing home area, just night and day in the feelings. Like, you cross into the nursing home area, it gets a lot more sad. Depressing, also a little bit more hostile. Very much like, go away, just leave, don't come in here, don't bother us. And the smell is even different, the feel is different. And that's not really like that at Whispers. I feel like at Whispers, the feelings that you get there are kind of the same throughout the house. There are certain pockets that like feel a little bit different than others, but like for the most part, it's pretty consistent, at least for me. But like that place, it was like totally different based on where you went. So working with that kind of energy is definitely something on your mind. Also, Jasmine doing the Three Kings at the Sanatorium, she's in these tunnels that connect 4 buildings. So this is 18,000 square feet of space that's all being connected by these tunnels. So that's inviting all the energy from each one of these buildings straight to her and concentrating in one spot. Whereas at Whispers, it was like, you're working with a 2,000 square foot house versus all that space. So I was a lot more nervous for her for that. And also for us, because I was like, there's no way that she's going to be able to contain all of this for that long. But she did. But I was nervous that it would hurt her, overcome her, make her vomit, make her sick, make her, something like that. So that was a little bit concerning for me. And also I took like a bunch more people this time. So that was always a nerve-wracking thing. Whereas at Whispers, we didn't even have 10 people, I don't think. I think we had 8 people. This time we had 12. So it was a lot bigger group. Doing the seance at Whispers, I had talked to those spirits before. Like, Jordan and I had been talking to those spirits for years. They knew us. Every time we go, they talk to us, specifically mention our names. And sometimes they'll be nice and they'll say, hey, you're back again, things like that. So it's almost like we run into friends and we know them well. But you go to this kind of place, you don't know who you're talking to. 4,000 people have died. You don't know who or what you're talking to. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea who would come through or if they would come through at all. Jordan did a test run with the spirit box before we did the seance just to see if anything would come through, and he wasn't really getting much. And I was like, there's no way that they don't want to talk. And they did want to talk. It just took us some time to like make sure the malefic energy was pulled away from them, because I very much think that is there to silence them, because they've been silenced for so long. So that was a different experience because I had no idea who was going to come through and what they were going to say. I did not imagine, and maybe this is me being naive, I don't know, but I did not imagine that it would be so many children. And I did not imagine that they would have such horrific stories of abuse. Like I said, it doesn't surprise me, I guess, but I did not think that that's what we would get. I thought we would get a lot of old folks. I thought we would get maybe some people that worked there. I thought we would get a lot of malefic energy telling us to leave and F you and call us a whore and all those things that they like to say to us when we're there. But really, we got, more than anything, we got kids. And we got kids telling us some disturbing things that happened to them there. And again, like, I'm not going to necessarily go into that detail because I don't want to trigger anybody. But if you watch the seance audio, you'll hear them talking about that. And Hale locked in on that immediately and knew to ask about those things, which, like I said, maybe it's because I was trying to block it out, and I didn't want to think about that. I don't know, but Hale locked in on that and they wanted to talk about that. They wanted us to know that. And I think that was probably a well-kept secret there, because the way that our tour guide phrased it, this was one of the most accredited schools in the state at the time for kids that had TB. There was a waiting list. They did all these great things for the kids. So who knew that they were being forced at gunpoint to do terrible things? But they wanted to talk about that. So that was a big difference, because like, I know the Whispers history. Like, I know all the stories of all the people that have died there for the most part. Like, I know what they're going to talk about because I've talked to them before, right? None of it's surprising to me, but hearing that was very sad. And that's, I think, again, what sticks out to me is hearing those stories of those abused kids. And working magic there, I want to say it was easier. I don't know why it was easier for me. I think it was easier because I'd done it before. But it was easier because I felt, I think, more confident, and I knew that I could do it. And I knew by the time I got into that space and started the chant that, per our cards, some of the music that we had listened to, like our conticumancy, that's my new word. Anyway, per that, I knew that they were going to want to talk. So I didn't think that would be a problem, but I did not know that it would be about that. So that's a big difference. At Whispers, they don't really talk about that kind of stuff. They mostly just try to shock you, scare you, or talk about you. The Whispers spirits like to kind of surprise you with facts they know about you. But these spirits were not like that. They just wanted to talk about what happened to them, and they wanted us to know. But again, I don't think they have that. I think people that go there treat it like a haunted house attraction. Ooh, are we going to hear things? Are we going to see things? Is it going to, and I understand that appeal. But I will tell you that when I was there, that was not something I experienced. I did not see things or hear things. Like, I didn't hear like doors slamming. I didn't see things floating. I didn't see stuff like that. At Whispers, I'd seen and heard things plenty of times, but this place, I personally didn't experience any of that. Some people might have, but I personally did not. But that to me, like, so in that way, I wouldn't call this place haunted in a conventional sense or a way that most of us think of haunted. I would call this place sad. And I would call this place a place where a lot of people they need to be remembered, and they deserve that. And I really wish they would put up some kind of memorial for those people before they do whatever they're going to do. Because it is very sad. And that's the big differences, I think, between Whispers and this experience. I think it was a lot more profoundly, emotionally impactful on a lot of us, more than we knew, because we did not realize that's what we would be getting. And I think it messed with a lot of us in that way. Really anxious about it, because I was like, all right, I'm taking all these people to a place I don't know. And it was my idea to go. Like, I booked it, it was my idea. So I was kind of leading the charge as far as like organization and all that goes. And if something bad happened, or like people didn't have a good time or whatever, and I don't know why that's what I was worried about, but that's what I was worried about. Or if people weren't down with what we were going to be doing, I was worried about that too. But I feel like the gods, the fates, whatever you want to, the universe, whatever, kind of stepped in, because not everybody who couldn't come. I want to preface it with saying that. Not everybody who couldn't come. But I feel like the people who wouldn't have been cool with that or down with that or able to do those things couldn't come. You know what I mean? Like, of course, not everybody. There were some people that we really wanted to be there that just couldn't logistically, and they would have been great, and they've done this stuff before with us. So I'm not talking about them. But I'm talking about like maybe the people who might have had trouble maneuvering around all that debris, or might have had trouble spiritually or philosophically with some of that stuff. Like my own brother, for instance, like he's very much a skeptic. I don't know how down for the seance he would have been. He would have probably been a good middleman, but I don't know how down for the seance he would have been. He ended up not being able to make it. Like people like that is who I'm talking about. So I was worried about that. And then I was worried about like, at first I wasn't going to lead the seance, and then somebody who was supposed to, like, couldn't make it because of, obviously work and things, because it was the middle of the week, right? So, it was kind of thrust to me sort of at the last minute, which was fine. I've done it before, but it helped that I had Hale there. It helped that I had Lorena there. So I had, like, some people who were experiencing this kind of thing, who've done this kind of thing before. I sort of felt like supported. Also, it was nice that I had Lorena there to cast protection over Jordan, which was going to be my original job. And I worry about him the most when I'm doing these things, because he is literally being a conduit for the dead. As much as Jasmine's being a conduit for the malefic energy, Jordan is channeling the dead, the spirits of the dead that want to talk to us. I think Jasmine has a harder time because they are purposely messing with her, whereas they're just talking to him. But it's still, like, for me, I'm always worried about my husband. So I was nervous about that. But I feel like once I got up there and we got started with the chanting, like, it was like something kind of autopilot took me, and I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I've done this before. Like, it feels like I've done this before. Like, I have done this before, but it also felt like I had done this before. So it was easy to be confident in what I was doing. And also, like, I tell everybody, you have a body and they don't, so don't be afraid. Like, I'm never afraid with stuff like that. Like, people always talk about, oh, am I going to bring something home? Am I going to get possessed? Like, it's not like The Conjuring, that's all Hollywood. But there are dangers of some of that stuff happening. Yeah, absolutely. But if you remember your power and you know your stuff and you do your research and you do your protection rites and rituals, like before I did this, I did my own work on my own to make sure that I had what I needed to perform all of this stuff and be safe and be together. Like, even when it came to banishing the malefic energy that did make it through for, like, a little bit, I was ready for that because I had already talked to the spirits that I needed to that were going to help me with that. They were on standby. They were ready to go. So as long as you do all that work and you believe in yourself, then you can do it. But it has to be done the right way. Closing thoughts. I think if someone were to ask me, like, is it worth going there? I want to go there. I would say yes and no, in that, like, yeah, I think it's fascinating. It's a really cool place to walk around and, like, look at things and, like, see this piece of Indiana history, because it's a big piece of Indiana history that we don't really learn about, we don't really talk about. And also, I think it's important to remember that there are places like this that exist still today. And our society is messed up, and we just drop people places and we don't appropriately care for them. And, like, thinking about that is important. And like, there's no better way to do that than to see it for yourself. If you're a fan of medical history, if you're a fan of that, learning about that kind of thing, this might be a good place for you to just kind of look around and remember that and see how that was done and what happened to these people, because they do need to be remembered. I would say no, because, like I said, I don't particularly think that it's a great idea to do what the people are going to do with it. Just personally, that's just an ethical thing of mine. But, if my parents had died in a place like this, or my children, would I want them turning it into a campground where they're going to play music and have weddings? Probably not. But, if you want to go check it out, but do it respectfully, and just keep in mind that this is a really sad place to be, and it's not all fun and games. If you're looking for thrilling fun and games, then Hannah Haunted Acres is open in October, so hit them up. I think it's an important historical site, and I feel really, really bad for all the families and the people affected by what happened there, because a lot of it was horrific neglect, abuse, and really sad. Just sad. Now, do I think it enriched my life by going? Yeah. I mean, I learned a lot, and it kind of checked me in a lot of ways, and also it helped me grow in my craft. But that wasn't like why I went. I wanted to go to hear these stories, and I heard them, and I had to hear them, and they were pretty sad. But yeah, that was my experience, and thank you for listening, and I hope that you enjoy the content that we're putting out about it. If you end up going there, please share your experience with us, because we'd love to know what you see, hear, and experience there too.
Until next time, blessed be.